Hi guys, welcome back to 100% Mags. So we are back in competitive action Tuesday night. This was of course meant to be the 21st, which would have been of course the Wednesday night, but it has been moved forward by 24 hours due to of course NHS strikes. So of course the game will be played on Tuesday night instead. It's 7:45. And this of course, like I say, is the return to competitive action for not only ourselves but also Bournemouth as well, since of course the last game we played, which was a competitive game of course on November 12th, of course us taking on Chelsea where we won 1-0 in the game, and of course Bournemouth where they took on Everton and won 3-0 in the game. Now, of course, this is a game where once again it's the Eddie Howe derby. We've already took on Bournemouth once this season already, with it ending in a 1-1 draw. And like I say, it's the return of the Eddie Howe derby, with, of course, a few former Bournemouth staff on, of course, the Newcastle United side, along the likes of course, Jason Tyndall and Graham Jones. Also, Eddie Howe, of course, and then some former Bournemouth players like Ryan Fraser, Matt Ritchie, Callum Wilson, etc. On the Newcastle side as well. Looking at it, this is going to be an interesting one, as Newcastle has played some games since that Chelsea game, albeit them being friendlies, of course, but we won in a game against Middlesbrough behind closed doors. We also won in a game out in Riyadh against Al Hilal, which we won 5-0. We ended up winning, of course, the Dahari Season Cup as well, whilst out there in the Middle East on the winter tour. And of course, also we won yesterday against Rio Valoca at St James's Park as well in a 2-1 win. Bournemouth, however, of course, during this time since their last competitive game against Everton, where they won 3-0 at home, they have not played any games, so they haven't been in action since that Everton game. They were, however, away on a winter warm weather training, which we have seen quite a few clubs take the benefit of, and Bournemouth, of course, benefiting by going out to Dubai for some warm weather training. This will, of course, be the first game as well for Bournemouth under their new owner, Bill Foley, the US businessman who has, of course, bought the club from, of course, their previous owner, and also in there as well in the background in owning a share in Bournemouth is, of course, actor Michael B. Jordan as well, famous for his roles in Rocky, obviously famous for his role as well in Black Panther. So, they'll more than likely maybe be there watching the game. Who knows? Bill Foley probably. Michael B. Jordan, I don't think he will be, to be honest. But if he is, it would be quite an interesting one to see. Just to see somebody of that magnitude sitting in the stands, watching Newcastle play at St James's Park. But looking at it, of course, Bournemouth progressed to this round after winning 4-1 against Everton in the third round. Of course, to make it into the third round, however, they had to get a win in penalty shootout against Norwich after a 2-2 draw. Of course, the manager at the time was old boy Scott Parker, of course, our old captain. He is no longer the manager, of course, with Gary O'Neill taking up the interim job, of course, when Bournemouth took on Newcastle. It's this season already. But now Gary O'Neill is the permanent manager of Bournemouth. So now it is going to be Gary O'Neill as the actual manager of Bournemouth this time around, instead of just being the caretaker manager like he was on our only game against them this season. Of course, Gary O'Neill and Eddie Howe are completely and utterly known to each other. They're no strangers to each other. They've already met in the past. Of course, the meeting this season, and of course in their playing careers as well, as Gary O'Neill was in the same Portsmouth squad as Eddie Howe. back in their playing days as well. So looking at the referee going into this game, it's going to be Peter Banks. It's the second game of the season for the Scouse Whistler, following on from a 1-1 1-1 draw, sorry, at Wolves. And it's also the referee that failed to give a penalty for, of course, Sean Longstaff getting pulled inside the box against Wolves as well. So hopefully he, does a better job on Tuesday night. Of course, no VAR for this game, as is the case for Carabao Cup games until I believe you get to the final. Then they do put VAR in then. But for, of course, this round, once again, there will be no VAR in operation. Looking at the stats, of course, the two sides drew 1-1 this season at St James's Park already, with the next meeting, of course, in the Premier League taking place in February. Of course, with this game, obviously, coming up on the Tuesday being the next meeting between Newcastle and Bournemouth. This is, of course, the second ever meeting in this competition of Newcastle versus Bournemouth. Of course, back then, it was, of course, a 2-1 defeat for Newcastle back in 1963, when, of course, Bournemouth were then known as Bournemouth and Boscombe Athletic, with them coming away as the winners in that game. So there's a little bit of history there between the two sides. Of course, in the past 5 games we've played in this competition as well, of course, we have won 2, drew 1, and lost 2. So, of course, there's a little bit of hope there that we can make it through into the quarter-final stages. Of course, with the most recent games being a 5-4 win on penalties against Newport County last season. Of course, the season back in 16-17 season, it was a 6-0 win against Preston North End at St James's Park. I was actually in attendance for that game. Very good game. We absolutely tore Preston North End apart, and I do believe it was one of the Madley brothers as the referee for the game as well. We then went on, of course, to beat them in the league just after that game as well. In the 14-15 season, we won 2-0 at the Etihad against Manchester City. The season before that, of course, was a 2-0 loss at St James's Park to Man City. And, of course, the 11-12 season saw we'll lose 4-3 at, of course, Ewood Park against Blackburn Rovers as well. Looking at the Cherries in all time from 1972 to 2023, of course, this game that we played this season already in the league, we've won 4, drew 2, and lost 2 against Bournemouth. So it's going to be an interesting one, this game on Tuesday night. Like I say, hopefully we can progress through into the quarterfinals, and if we do progress through into the quarterfinals as well, the game is scheduled to play on the week commencing the 9th of January, of course, and that means that if we were to progress through, then this game would fall between the Saturday evening FA Cup trip to Sheffield Wednesday down to Hillsborough on the 6th of January, and of course the Premier League Sunday visit for Fulham to St James's Park on the 15th of January as well. The date and time for the quarter-final draw as well is yet to be announced, but as always, that draw will more than likely take place after the last game of this round has played, which will be, of course, the Manchester United game on the 22nd. Of course, so keep an eye out for Newcastle in that draw if we progress through, and if Bournemouth progresses through, of course, any Bournemouth fans that are watching, keep an eye out for your team. But I've got high hopes that Newcastle can come away from this game with the win in the bag, progress through into the quarterfinals, and give us a good chance of making it all the way, hopefully, to the final, or depending on who we get. If we can make it past Bournemouth, or depending on who we get in the quarter-final draw. But there's some tasty ties in this one for the, this round of the Carabao Cup. There's some pretty interesting games in there. We've Man City and Liverpool facing off against each other, so yet another big team there is going to possibly be getting kicked out of the tournament. So it's going to be an interesting one to see, who progresses through. But I have, like I say, high hopes that we can come away with a win in this game on Tuesday night under the lights at St James's Park. And you know, like most teams have found out, it's quite difficult to beat Newcastle United under the lights at St James's Park, and we're really making St James's a fortress as well. Eddie Howe's doing absolutely amazing with the team and the players that were currently there, and he's done amazing with the players that have been brought in as well. So, you know, like I say, there's every chance that we can make it past this round and make it into the quarterfinals. And, you know, then we've still got the FA Cup as well to come against Sheffield Wednesday. We're still, you know, in third place in the Premier League as well, with the only 3 games remaining this year, with Bournemouth being one of them games. We've got the game, of course, against Leicester only 6 days after we take on Bournemouth. It's St James's Park, and then of course we've got the game against Leeds United to end out this year. It's of course St James's Park, the game against Leicester, of course, down at the King Power Stadium. So it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how we can end out this year of 2022 and progress into, of course, the January, where our first game of next year on the 3rd of January will be an away game against Arsenal. I'm hoping to get, of course, Luca on for that one, as he usually always comes on and talks about the Arsenal side of things. But, you know, keep an eye out on the channel for my reaction to this game. And also, till next time, remember to like, share, subscribe to 100% Mag. Trying to get a 2k subscribers and then push on from there. But till next time, I'll see you all later, and how are the lads?